Once upon a time, in a green and peaceful meadow, there lived a cricket. He was strong, handsome, and brave, but also arrogant and boastful. Because of that, all the other animals hated him except his neighbor, Weak Cricket. Weak Cricket was skinny and frail and was bullied by everyone. He was the complete opposite of Cricket, yet he was very gentle and kind. One day, Cricket teased Miss Sparrow, so she got really angry and attacked him. As she pecked at him, he managed to escape and run to his house. But when he opened the door accidentally, he stepped on Weak Cricket, who died right away. Cricket was extremely shocked. Before taking his last breath, Weak Cricket told him, "Don't be arrogant like me. If not, one day you will die alone and nobody will care." Then he closed his eyes forever. Cricket felt so guilty and sad about what had happened, and he knew that his neighbor was right. He realized that he had been a jerk for a long time and never tried to make amends. He spent the next few days thinking about his life. As a result, he decided to go on an adventure far beyond the meadow to find someone who could help him become a better version of himself. So he packed some food and walked out into the wild world outside his home for the first time. After walking for a while, he saw a big tree in the distance and approached it. And that's where he met Long Antennae, a large and strong grasshopper who was resting under the tree. They talked for a while, and Cricket asked if he could stay under the tree because he was going on an adventure. Long Antennae agreed and said, "You can stay here as long as you want. Just don't get in my way." Then they went silent again. After a while, Long Antennae noticed that Cricket seemed upset and asked him what was wrong. So Cricket told him about what happened back in the meadow. Long Antennae listened patiently and then said, "It sounds like you need some friends to help you on your journey." Cricket nodded, and both of them continued walking. Soon they found a small river, but there was no bridge, and the banks were too slippery to climb down and walk around. Looking at the fast-flowing water, Cricket suddenly said, "I bet I can cross it without falling in." Long Antennae looked at him and replied, "Oh, so you think you're so tough, huh?" Cricket said, "If I fall in, I'll admit that I'm not as strong as you. But if I can cross the river, you have to do as I say for the rest of the journey." Long Antennae pondered for a moment before finally agreeing. Then Cricket jumped into the river, but soon started to struggle against the current. Long Antennae immediately jumped in after him and both made it to the other side safely. After resting a bit, Long Antennae said, "All right, now you have to keep your promise." Cricket nodded and said, "From now on, you can call me Brown Cricket." Long Antennae smiled and said, "Brown Cricket, it is." As they continued their adventure together, they met many kinds of creatures, some friendly and some dangerous. They had to escape from spider webs, cross rushing rivers, and even fight off bullies bigger than themselves. During these adventures, Brown Cricket discovered something upsetting. He realized that everywhere he went, the weak were always getting bullied by the strong. One day, while resting under a bush after a long journey, he thought to himself, "Why is life so unfair? Why are the weak always suffering?" At that moment, he remembered the words of his friend, "Weak Cricket, don't be arrogant like me. If not, one day you will die alone and nobody will care." He realized that his friend wasn't talking about himself, but about all the weak creatures who were being oppressed by the strong. Thinking about this made him so upset that he cried. Suddenly, a ladybug landed on his shoulder and asked why he was crying. Brown Cricket explained everything to her, and the ladybug listened patiently. When he finished, she said, "You're right, it's not fair, but we have to do something about it. We can't just keep suffering." Brown Cricket looked at her and asked, "What should we do?" The ladybug smiled and said, "We need to call a meeting. I believe we can create a world where everyone lives fairly and peacefully." Brown Cricket loved this idea and decided to do everything he could to make it happen. So he and the ladybug started traveling together and told every creature they met about the meeting. Many were afraid at first, wondering why the ladybug and the cricket wanted to see them. But as more and more creatures joined, they started to believe and trust each other. Finally, the day of the meeting arrived. All the creatures gathered together in the meadow where Brown Cricket had started his adventure. There were ants, grasshoppers, spiders, ladybugs, butterflies, worms, beetles, mice, moles, and many more. Everyone was excited and couldn't wait for the meeting to begin. When everyone was quiet, Brown Cricket stood on a stone and began, "Friends, I know you're tired of living in fear and sadness. You're tired of being bullied by the big bad creatures. But I think we can change things. We can create a world where everyone is respected and where no one has to be afraid anymore. To do this, we need to unite. We need to show the strong that we are not afraid anymore. We are strong when we are united. At first, the other creatures didn't say anything. They were scared and didn't know what to do. But Brown Cricket kept talking, and slowly they started to cheer up. Finally, the mouse said, "I agree. We have to do something about this. I can't take it anymore." Hearing this, the others started talking and making plans. The meeting lasted for hours, and by the end of it, Brown Cricket had become a spiritual leader for all of them. He helped the weak to resist the strong and taught them to stand up for themselves. All the creatures cheered and celebrated their unity, and Brown Cricket felt happy knowing that he had finally become stronger than his arrogance. From that day on, nothing was the same. The strong could no longer bully the weak because they knew that they would be stopped. Everyone lived happily in their little corner of the meadow, until one day a group of birds arrived. They were huge and scary, and none of the creatures dared to stop them. The birds ate everything they could find and destroyed everything else. They were so powerful that no one could stop them. But Brown Cricket refused to give in. He called all the creatures to another meeting and said, "We have to do something about these birds. They're destroying our home." All the creatures were afraid, but they trusted Brown Cricket, so they all decided to work together to drive the birds away. They created catapults to throw stones, built shelters to hide in, and made loud noises to scare the birds. After a week of hard work, their plan was ready. Brown Cricket gave the signal, and all the creatures attacked at once. The birds were so surprised by the resistance that they had never seen before that they started to panic. In the end, they had no choice but to fly away. The creatures were so happy that they had won that they celebrated for days. Brown Cricket was very proud of everyone because he knew that they had accomplished something great together. He realized that his dream of creating a fairer and more peaceful world was coming true, and he knew that even though the road was still long and difficult, they would face it together and overcome any challenge. Many years passed and Brown Cricket grew old. His body was worn out from all the battles and adventures he had lived through, but his spirit was strong and his ideals were still alive. He had gone from being a young and arrogant cricket to a wise and experienced leader who had made the world a better place for all creatures. As he looked back on his life, he couldn't help but smile. He had learned that it's important to live humbly, to love and respect others, and to unite with those who suffer to create a better world. And he knew that these lessons would continue to guide him for the rest of his days. So that's the story of Brown Cricket, a story about humility, friendship, and courage. Remember, no matter how difficult the path may seem, if you walk it with others, it becomes easier. Don't be afraid to show your true colors and always believe in the power of unity. Till next time.